Hello everybody, this is an update about our worm composting toilet system that we've been using for 2.5 years at this point. If you want all the details, a bunch of shots of how we installed it, all that, go back to our old video first, but there have been a lot of requests for this update, so thank you to all the people that have watched and asked questions and made comments on the first one. So, this system, where we last left off about 9-10 months ago, was that we had transitioned from tank number 1 to tank number 2 because tank number 1 was full and it was urgent that we made a switch. Now, I feel really confident I've diagnosed the problems with tank 1. The primary issue was that as we moved on through the 1.5 years of using tank number 1, I think I was too aggressive with adding specifically wood chips. You know, there's a schedule. Every so often you'll need to add some kind of material to help that mix inside the tank be something suitable for the worms to work with. But I definitely overdid it on the wood chips, and it hit a point where there were far too many in, say, the top third of the tank, and it created a layer with not enough air and open space and volume for material to move down through the system towards the lower parts of the tank, specifically our waste to move down and for the worms to move up and down, keeping that stuff moving. The tight pack of wood chips created kind of a firm layer that got higher and higher up. Right alongside that problem was compounded with having too much toilet paper go into the system, which hits those wood chips and instantly stops, can't go anywhere, and kind of created a pileup. So we've kind of come up with two solutions working together in tank number 2. The first one is I don't have any wood chips in the top half of that tank. I really focused on creating what I'm calling a wood lattice, stacking branches and twigs in such a way that they kind of stack up almost like kind of a teepee, stacking against each other at different angles, really making an effort to create scaffolding but leaving a lot of open empty space, and then just using leaves primarily as a material to kind of float around up there. On top of that, we got a bidet. Our family uses a bidet now. A very simple one off of Amazon that cost us $40. It plugs onto a normal toilet. It's just basically a seat attachment. Or excuse me, not a seat attachment. It's just an attachment that sits at the back of the seat of the toilet and plugs into the cold water inlet that you already have for your toilet. It just piggybacks onto that. So super simple to install, and really happy with that. We put a lot less toilet paper in. So those are our main two solutions that are working really well and making tank number 2 work better than tank number 1 did. So I'll head over here and give you more specific look. One issue I should have addressed in the original video but didn't was odor. A huge concern for us and kind of a criteria for whether or not we would keep using this system is, does it smell bad anywhere near this tank? You know, our deck is right up there on the other side of that firewood. The yurt's right there. We're walking around here all the time. We don't want to smell it, and we definitely don't want guests to smell it. And you don't smell anything out of this system. I'd have to open this up, and not just open this up, but open up the access hatch and stick my head all the way in to smell sewer-like smells. So really pleased with that. Really don't have any odor issues to report at all. Okay, got the lid pulled up and I'm about to take a peek. We'll see what's in there. I'm not going to show you our nitty-gritty specifics, but it is interesting. Sometimes the worms crawl right on up. Okay, I just added a few more of these leaves so you don't have to see anything untoward. Here's This is our active tank. It's been active for somewhere between 10 and 12 months, probably 10 to 11. It's doing really well. No issues with it seeming to get close to overflowing. Not even close. You can see some of these worms. Now this is what I was talking about. You see these big sticks like that one. That's that idea of the lattice I was talking about, where I really focused more on creating a lattice of sticks going in at different angles, almost a bit like building a teepee, just as a way to kind of give some structure and scaffolding to this without just filling it to the brim like I had done with wood chips, where there's just no open space. The open space seems to be really, really important. Kind of poking around here on the sides, you can see down there, that's the layer of the original wood chips. I think that's a little bit below the halfway point of the tank, and I'm really pleased with that. I won't add wood chips again for many, many years. I like this mix of leaves and a lattice of sticks. Seems to be doing really well. And here's tank 1 opened up. You can see a little hangout of worms on the top of the standpipe. I haven't looked in this tank in quite a while. The volume of wood chips seems to have gone down a few inches, but still way too many. I think I have no choice but to get a pitchfork and pull wood chips out of here to make enough room to create that wood lattice that I was talking about. Here, let me put on a glove and I'll dig around in there for you for a second. So, it does seem clear to me this is very well processed material. I don't think there's anything left of any kind of human waste. You know, lots of wood chips. Just has a very earthy smell to it. But again, this is too dense of a volume of woody material to function as an active tank. So I'll be fixing that before we do anything else in here. One of the more frequent questions from the comments of the original video was about planting plants. As you can see, grass has really come into the entirety of this area, which, as a reminder, was we excavated out plenty of soil to make room to create the piping system down here, and then grass grew in. A little bit of our invasive blackberry is in here, and then we planted, or my wife Tina planted, a few water-loving plant that just up until winter started recently, it was standing up tall and beautiful. A little bit of snow knocked it down. But might toy with a little bit more water lily. My main concern of getting carried away with planting anything is anything with a heavy root system that might work its way into the piping would be my concern. So I like the idea of plants like these water lilies, that they get too far ahead of us and we just rip them out. I don't think I want to plant trees anywhere within, say, 20 feet of where I'm standing. But I'm open to suggestions of plants that, because the main thought I have on planting these plants is it'd be a great way to take advantage of the really heavy fertilizer that's basically dropping its way through this system. Plants that can take advantage of that, and then we can harvest them and go do something else with it would be good. Of course, we're not going to do anything that we would eat like that. So I guess they'd be composting would be the main thing I could think of. Leafy greens that you'd throw into your compost. Otherwise, some kind of fast growing firewood species maybe, but we have 50 acres and more firewood than we need already. So I'm not convinced that I would want to do that either. So something like water lilies works for now. So what's my plan for the 2 tanks moving forward? I've got a game plan for switching between the 2 tanks once a year. And my plan is to take advantage of the fact that the worms are very, very active, doing a lot of work processing the waste in the warm part of the year. So say May to September for us is a window of really, really high worm activity. I was happy to see some worms moving around a bit just now, early December, but compared to summertime, that was nothing. So my idea is to direct our waste to a different tank sometime every February is what I kind of have in mind. And why then? Well, my idea is a whole year of directing waste into one tank, kind of culminating with a winter when the worms are at their slowest, and then making a switch. So we'll leave one tank, jump to the other. It starts to fill up in that late winter, or fill up not necessarily, but starts to have deposits in late winter. And then heading into spring and summer, the new tank has had a few months to receive waste. The old tank had been receiving a whole year's worth just up until a couple months prior. And then I think that'll be a way to maximize worm activity in 2 separate tanks every summer, is timing it with that switch in the end of the winter. So that's my current game plan. Looking at tank number 2, I'm sure it won't actually need a switch heading into this February, just 2 months out. But I don't want to push it. I don't want to end up in a spot like we did with the first tank last year, where it became an emergency, make a change or the system is no longer working. So I want to be proactive and do that switch once a year, and we can leave it for another project to really figure out if one tank is enough. Like pull off one tank without ever making changes. But again, we are a family of 5, but baby's not potty trained yet. She should be soon. So family of 5 on this 2 tank system, I think, is the safe way to go. And no matter what kind of problem we have, some kind of failure with one tank, there's always a second tank. So that's my plan for the double tank. And then that kind of brings up a really common question from the more skeptical folks watching the original video, is around the idea of, how often do you need to take stuff out of there? There's really a fixation on what are you taking out of the tank. And again, I am going to have to take all those wood chips out of tank number 1. So that's what I am actually taking out of it. But I think working correctly, I won't need to do that. So, fast forward another year or more, and let's see if I ever have to take anything out of tank number 2. And then I'll know one way or the other if, I can stick with that claim of never needing to actually take anything out of the tank. But I think that scaffolding system of sticks and branches, along with some leaves to fill in some of those gaps but not too heavily, is truly the key to keeping a system that I don't have to pull anything out of. And I should also emphasize again, getting that bidet is definitely helping a lot. You use less toilet paper as it is, because the bidet really does a great job taking care of everything. And when you use toilet paper, it's basically just drying yourself off. If everything went well with the bidet, there's nothing there for the toilet paper to get but water. And so, to do an even better job of putting less toilet paper in the system, if we're just using toilet paper and all it's doing is drying ourselves, we just throw it in the trash next to the toilet rather than dropping it into the toilet. So there's a lot of times where we're putting close to 0 toilet paper in, but we don't fixate on it, The kids put a little bit in there. Guests definitely put toilet paper in there, and that's fine. But, you know, the day in, day out bulk toilet paper that we used to put through the system has been reduced by well over 50%, maybe 75 plus. So, really happy with that. I also want to point out, if you remember, our gray water system used to come out right about here, and it had this white residue. And my attempted solution at the end of the original video was to put a 10-foot stick of perforated pipe, used gravel below it, and some fabric, and a little more gravel over the top of it. And that is working fantastically. I don't see any sign of any residue or anything like that anymore. So really happy with that move to spread that gray water out further downstream. Speaking of that fabric, one piece of feedback I got from the administrator at vermicompostingtoilets.net was that weed block fabric I used is, you know, too fine, not large enough, porous enough holes in it compared to products they recommend. I just used what I found at our local hardware store. So if you're doing one of these systems, I would follow their advice and look for a more porous fabric for that initial install so that you're less likely to gum up. Okay, I'll leave it there. Try to keep this to a short update. Thanks for all the questions, compliments. There's been a lot more comments on this worm composting system video than any videos I make, which is fine. We're a small channel, kind of keeping friends and family up to date with what we're doing, but this one really seemed to jump out at a lot of people as something they're interested in trying, and they want more first-hand information about it. So I hope I covered the essentials of what you're interested in with this update, and of course leave some comments if you have more questions. Otherwise, we're going to keep chugging along with this system for another year, and I'll if there's anything noteworthy, the next update would be around that. Otherwise, over the next year again, we're going to switch tanks in February and keep going. And again, to drive home the main lessons learned, use a wood lattice for the top half of the tank. Use sizable branches, different sizes, stacked every which way to kind of create a lattice with lots of air volume in it, and then throw leaves and loose stuff in it, but don't fill it up with a bunch of wood chips. And then and get a bidet. Bidets are awesome. I'm a bidet evangelist now. You should get one, even if you don't have a worm composting toilet system. You'll have a healthier butt for a bidet, I promise. You should try it. Alright, thanks, and I'll see you next time.
Sometimes when I wipe, I'll wipe, and I'll wipe, and I'll wipe, and I'll wipe 100 times. Still poop.
Let me check that.